Hello and welcome to the One People Show. Hello and welcome everyone to this week's One People Roundtable. We have Danny again over in Malta during the day and in the sun and the heat. And we have a couple of special guests with us today who many of you may not know, and we're kind of excited to introduce you to them if you don't. They are two Australian guys that live not too far from me and have a website called Wake Up World. And they are wonderful, wonderful human beings. So we thought we would have a chat with them, get their perspective on a few things, give them a chance to tell their story. And so welcome, Ryan and Andy, if you're both there.
We are. Hey, how are you, babe?
Here they are. Look at these scruffy Aussies.
We've got a bit of a tea situation here. We just spilled tea all over our desk.
Your waste of tea. They drink tea.
Yeah, tea's just gone everywhere, but that's all right. We'll mop it up.
So, okay, I've known you guys for, oh God, when was that? When did we meet?
2012.
2012. 11th to the 11th, wasn't it?
11th to the 11th. On the 11th of the 11th, yeah.
It was 11/11 we were down that hole.
Yeah.
On the 11th of the 11th.
We met on a trek to the Gosford Glyphs. Now, I have in the past interviewed two different people, two different researchers on the Gosford Glyphs with two very different stories. And you guys were part of that initially, and then you've gone off on a different track altogether, and I want to hear what because one interpretation was it was aliens, another interpretation is it was Egyptians. The Egyptian one seems closer, and yet the interpretation not quite bang on as far as what you guys have discovered in connection with people in Egypt, right?
Sure, yeah.
So this is really controversial here in Australia because it's connected to so many issues around sovereignty, around land rights, and even this current discussion about whether or not we're supposed to or we should now teach that Cook invaded as opposed to discovered, you know. It's not just a simple matter of what are these little drawings on a rock represent. What are they saying? It's so much more significant than that. The story is so much bigger than that. Because it ties into, well, it looks like the indigenous here had treaties with so many other cultures and throughout history, and where that leaves them now. So how did this story go for you guys from down a hole that day in Kariong?
Kariong in which is about an hour and a half north of Sydney for anybody that doesn't know where we're speaking about. As you were saying, Lisa, that's the first day we met. There was a large group of us that were trekking the country out there and having a look at these most interesting glyphs in the middle of the bush. And we were working with quite a large group of people. There's probably 10 to 15 sometimes.
We had anywhere up to about 25 on site though once we actually brought in different experts and anything from archaeologists to intuitives and anything in between.
Yeah, so we started working with a group of people, and we sort of diverged a bit towards the end. What we essentially did as a group was able to transcribe the glyphs onto paper and take a lot of photos. And one of the people in our group, by the name of a lady by the name of Sonia, she had contacts within Egypt, and these Egyptians were pretty much experts in hieroglyphics. So we sent it all across to them, and it probably took close to a year.
It took them 8 months.
About 8 months for them to actually come back to us with something solid, and their end result from that was that there was no shadow of a doubt for them that what we were showing them were 100% Egyptian glyphs in Australia.
Is this the first time they'd heard of the Kariong or Gosford Glyphs?
I believe it was. I believe the connection they had with Sonia predated this, but Sonia was able to get them on board, and it was really exciting for them because they were about to be able to prove that Egyptians were travelling the world and made it to various locations around the world.
Far away from the Mediterranean basin.
Yeah. So they did a really in-depth job of it at the end. They ended up doing about a 3-hour, 3-part documentary on it, and they really went back to the start and started from the point of could Egyptians actually make it to Australia at this time frame that they were suggesting, which was around 500 BC.
Based on the language, it was 500 BC was where they landed with the script. They did go back in history, though, to actually start looking at the seafaring nature of the Egyptians, and that went anywhere back to, there were photos of sea ships, and not even just small craft, but sea ships that would have a crew of tens and tens of people, and that was happening in about 3000 BC, and that's all over temple walls and carvings and pottery and that sort of thing. So it was well documented that they could travel and that they did travel. They were seafarers, and there were different, even different sorts of craft that they used for quiet rivers compared to actually going out on the ocean. So they went right back and actually looked looked at the question of could they before they looked at did they.
Nice.
Yeah, so I'll just shoot a link through to the chat. There's a bit of an article there, but it actually it's got all 3 videos in there. As we said before, it does go for quite some time. It's very detailed, and they covered all their bases to make sure that this is watertight. So yeah, the link I've just sent through has got a bit of a background in an article, but then it's got all the 3 documentaries there as well for people to watch.
So what's the premise of the story that's told on the glyphs?
So it turns out to be quite a simple story.
Well, there are 2.
Yeah, so there's about 300 glyphs on 2 separate walls. I'll just share my screen and just show a picture of the glyphs so everybody that's watching can actually see what we're talking about. Has that come through?
It's
starting to.
Thinking about it.
Yeah, here we go.
There we go.
All right, so this is a bit of a close-up. This is what they probably call the right-hand side of the wall. Has the next picture come through? It's hard to tell from this end.
Yep.
Oh, that's me.
Yeah. There's Lisa.
There's Lisa down in the bottom corner.
So yeah, what they essentially did was decode the side of the wall that we're currently looking at the moment. And what appears that's happened in the past, because there's been lots of people that have tried to decode the glyphs, but it would appear probably the main problem that people have had trying to do this is that they've tried to decode each single glyph by itself. And as it actually turns out, it could be up to 6 glyphs actually make up just one word. It could be a small word. Let me just stop sharing that for a sec. Cool, are we back?
Yeah, you back?
Oh, cool, awesome. So yeah, Andy might like to talk about the people that actually decoded them and a bit of their background and.
The Kemet School was the team that we sort of worked with there. And besides the founder, Patricia Arwian, there was 2 researchers there, and one of them is actually a teacher of hieroglyphics. And both have been involved in hieroglyphs and ancient Egyptian studies for their entire lives, and they're both now in their 30s and 40s. So we're talking about a real wealth of information, even just with those 3 people. So what they really did was to start, like Ryan said, start to decompose, to sort of deconstruct the glyphs in the way that only somebody who actually knows how to read glyphs can do. It's the sort of thing that an amateur can just look at it and then look at a book and go, oh, that means this, and start to string sentences together, because there's all sorts of syntax and grammar, and it can be anywhere from 5 or 6 glyphs form one word, or one glyph forms a word, or it forms just a few syllables. And so they actually went through the process of mystery for them, that being as expert as they were in it, there were some certain glyphs that stumped them, and they found some symbols in the on the walls there that actually they couldn't find them. They'd not seen them in any of the official texts where hieroglyphs are documented, and so they actually had to then do a lot of back work, and there was glyphs on those walls that have been known to the area in Kariong since the early 1900s that weren't actually found and decoded on Egyptian temple walls until 2012. So at that point, they were looking at these glyphs going, what are they? And then suddenly someone would figure out the glyph. And so we were really dealing in the reality that there's no way that somebody's just taken text from a temple or from a book and just sat there and carved it, like the hoax theories have always said, that it was, drunk uni students or some crazy person who's been in Egypt. What it actually took was somebody with a really firm grip on grammar and, local lingo, and even the way pronunciation works, because there are certain things that are done phonetically in that language. So they really had to break it down. But the clincher for us was the fact that there were some markings on those walls that even they didn't recognise, and they had to do the back research and find them in other temples and then translate them from that context and bring the context into the walls and carry on. And then again, it all made perfect sense.
These busting things.
It's really the big thing. What's up there? No, Danny.
Well, I have a question, because this immediately, as soon as you said they've got certain ones that the Egyptians had never seen before, were they crossover glyphs that they learned in Australia from the Origines,
So
and
when they
started and then brought that back to Egypt?
I just made that clear exactly what was said there. There was a particular glyph on the wall that didn't actually make it into official Egyptian
Dictionaries.
Dictionaries until 2012. So they've always existed, but obviously there's so many hieroglyphs that go through so many different stages of time in Egypt that it's obviously a lot to document and get all in together. I think these guys had to work off 3 different...
We don't have a dog.
We don't have a dog.
That wasn't Maya. That was Bruce.
There's
different... I know there's different ages of hieroglyphs, including the earliest, I think, is the Proto-Egyptian, right? Okay. So
language changes over time. Like English has changed over time, over centuries, and the way people spoke English a couple of centuries ago, is not even recognisable. And it's the same with Egyptian, which is how they were actually able to date. But to put a time frame on it, it wasn't just based on looking at the the structures or that sort of thing. It was actually the language that was the giveaway and the way the language was used.
Like comparing Shakespearean English to modern day English.
Yeah, absolutely. So they were just comparing, modern hieroglyphics to ancient hieroglyphics and the Proto-Egyptian, and that was how they sort of estimated that time frame as the use of language and how that actually worked.
Now there is some question, or at least controversy perhaps, that the Egyptians may have even learnt the hieroglyphic language from the Origines here when they were here and took it back to Egypt. Is there any evidence to suggest that?
I couldn't go that far to say that.
I think that would probably be a little bit of a stretch just based on the evidence that we've got. I suppose given that the walls do date at around the 500 BC mark, but hieroglyphics, in Egypt goes back thousands and thousands of years beyond that. And based on the narrative on the wall, it appears that Egyptians were already writing these hieroglyphs before they came here, and that it was actually not, professional hieroglyphics writers who created these walls, which is why they look a bit sketchy. These were people on an expedition to come and live with the Aborigines and live in Australia and share the accord that's documented on these walls with the Aborigines. And that's exactly what they did.
Mm. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of... Sorry, what was that?
Dee, did you want to say something? You're muted. But...
It's older, but only if you believe the accepted Egyptian histories.
Correct.
So the thing that now we're learning is these guys, these historians at the turn of the 19th century in Russia and in Europe and in England are discovering that the Egyptian histories that were taught in school are bogus, and that there's whole empires that have been inserted in, and they're now cross-referencing and going, wait, this guy was this guy's brother, but they lived 400 years apart? I don't fucking think so. So it's interesting because now if we start looking at things like dating, and like the ages of these glyphs, it kind of opens up possibilities. Like it really does open up a lot of possibilities.
We've discussed quite a lot about the insertion of history and the false history that we've been given. And over the last 12 months, that's been a regular topic on this show. So, yeah, when it comes to putting a date on things, I'm very, very wary, to be honest with you.
No, absolutely. Based on the official Egyptian history.
With one of the stories that I was given before, one of the interpretations of the glyphs was that, yes, they came here, and then there was a huge... What is that?
That's not here.
Where the hell was that coming from? Okay, someone must be unmuted. Hold on.
Is that somebody in the room?
Yeah, it must be someone in the room because I'm like, wait, we're hearing children, and I left mine at home.
Who's not muted? Jenny! Jenny!
I'm going to try and find who's unmuted. It's not working.
I can see it. Jenny's not muted.
And there was another one.
No, Jenny doesn't have a microphone.
Zanama.
Oh, they don't have a microphone.
Oh, no microphone.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, Mama. No problem. Muted. It's okay.
Glitch in the matrix.
Unfortunately, that's the lovely thing about Zoom. Occasionally, people just magically unmute. And I really don't think I guess just Zoom goes, I can fuck with them, watch this. Click.
Oh, the wonders of technology.
So back to your question you asked a little while ago, Lisa, what is the narrative?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. It's actually a really simple and short narrative. Even though there's so many glyphs on that wall, it actually condenses into a really short story. And as I said from the start, they've only decoded one wall at the moment, and because it took so long, they're just taking a bit of a break, and hopefully they'll get around to decoding the second side. But in a nutshell, it talks of the Egyptians leaving this area on the central coast. It would appear from the aliens who decoded the glyphs that they believed that this was probably the last, potentially one of the last groups of Egyptians to leave Australia. And they headed out to sea. They got caught in a big, massive storm, and the boat broke up. A few remaining survivors did make it back to shore. Obviously, the people who did the glyphs themselves, they survived. A handful of others, and the rest would appear that they ended up washing onto shore and were essentially buried in a mass tomb that's not that far away from the actual glyphs itself, which becomes another interesting story.
Which is another adventure I want to talk about a little bit later. Yes.
Good. Just as a little hint, we found it.
So yeah, it's really just...
Has any of this been acknowledged by any of the Australian institutions or bodies?
We have difficulty in that. There's the difficulty in taking any of this, I suppose, in terms of location and actually putting it in the hands of the establishment is an issue of trust, I suppose, and how much of that do we want to go into? Well, the sorts of things that tend to be in Egyptian tombs tend to get people a little bit greedy, we'll put it that way.
Yeah.
So besides the history that's buried within, there's also some shiny things quite potentially, and so really we don't want the truth sort of overrun by greed in that way. So until the time is right and we can actually start dealing with a government who are genuinely looking to preserve our history, not cover up and defend the status quo and the corporate rubbish that comes with it, there's not really anybody to trust in that process to actually go and shake their hand and say, this is what we know and this is what we found, and actually don't and believe that the right thing will be done. So for now, I suppose we're really the caretakers of that story, and we'll sit on it until the time's right.
And I guess an example of why government and people in Australia don't really want this story out there, we actually took ABC News to the Glyphs. This was before the Arwins decoded it. And she was quite a lovely young journalist, and we weren't too sure exactly what she was going to do, but she ended up publishing an article on it, and it was quite balanced, and she just wrote what she saw and didn't go into much more than that. But it became a really interesting story that it made it onto Central Coast ABC News' website, and then the actual radio picked it up. And then from there that morning, it just started to spread. Newcastle, which is a few hours north of there, picked it up and made it onto the radio. Then Sydney picked it up and made it onto the radio.
And this all happened in a matter of hours.
In a matter of hours, it really started to spread. And then by midday, we were absolutely blown away because it made it onto Triple J, and that was syndicated right across Australia. Within a few minutes of that, no more radio. We didn't hear anything about it on radio. The article that the journalist wrote was removed from ABC's website, but they even went a step further than that and literally scrubbed anything to do with the Kariong Glyphs that was on ABC's website. We're talking about articles that were there 8 years ago. They scrubbed it all.
There was no mention of Kariong whatsoever.
No mention of Kariong on ABC's website at all.
But it went on from there too. For the next 2 days, we were contacting ABC to find out what was going on with the story and why it had been revoked, and we couldn't get any answers out of this journalist or anybody, and she shut down on us. And it was, I think, about 2 days after it was removed, or maybe a third day after the first story was removed, another article was published with her name on it, which she clearly didn't write. It was a propaganda piece, and it was quite extraordinary that was where they landed. They basically called us all nut jobs and stirred up all of the old hoax theories, and that's the sole remaining piece of Kariong reporting on their website.
Seriously?
What we engaged in that couple of days was a back and forth where they were posting an article, so we posted an article, and then they posted their bullshit article, and then we posted another article that highlighted their bullshit article and also screen captured their original article that they had withdrawn. Because we were smart enough to take screenshots. We're not stupid. We've been doing this long enough. So it really became like it was the mass media versus alternative media. This to and fro really began, and it was quite strange. And the reporter ended up not talking to us after a little while. She just wouldn't return our calls because she was young and just wanted to report. I think she really got caught in the bureaucracy of what went on.
In the crossfire.
Absolutely. Like Ryan had said, it wasn't until it actually hit the national feed, Triple J radio, and that the heads of news actually jerried what was going on and pulled the story. But the story that they told us was that it hadn't passed, journalistic, integrity.
Yeah.
She hadn't done her due diligence. It was due diligence.
Slapped him sideways.
It was a question of due diligence, which was absolutely ridiculous because the second piece had no fact in it. There was no basis, and nobody it didn't reflect her visit, even though it was her name used. And we'd asked her the question whether or not it was her that actually wrote that article and never got an answer from her.
Yeah.
That's the article, and it just wasn't the same voice.
Having a gun to your head.
That's
Correct.
called, and a non-answer is your answer.
Yeah. So at best, we probably helped wake up a poor little journalist who wanted to do the right thing, who realised the beast that she was working for. Don't know what's come of her, but that's her story.
So I'll just, as Andy said,
somewhere. It's just
well, she might be working for alternative media somewhere. I don't know. If she wants a job, and she's
I hope so.
but yeah, as Andy said, we were screenshotting everything as we went along, and Andy wrote an article up, and I've just put the link into the chat if anybody actually wants to follow that a bit further and see how it all played out. And
that takes me back.
Yeah.
And when we write up the article, when Lisa and I write up the article to go with the video, we will make sure all these links are put in the article, so you guys, everyone who's watching this on YouTube, etc., will be able to go back and back up and backtrack it all, because some seriously cool photos.
Lovely.
Yeah, very.
So there was lots of confirmation from different places that told Andy and I that what we were seeing at Kariong was for real and it was Egyptian. And I loved what the Arwens did, and they did it so watertight. But for me personally, the thing that rang most true for me was when we first moved to the Central Coast, we were extremely lucky to be introduced to the last remaining female Aboriginal elder. And the glyphs were on her land. And probably before we go on, this lady's name is Auntie Bev. Unfortunately, in the last year, she has passed on through a bit of an accident while she was out on country and looking at some things. But yeah, Andy and I were really lucky that we got introduced to her, and I felt even more lucky because I reminded her of her grandson who was in the United States. So she really took me under her wing, and I'd go visit her out on her property, and she'd bake me cakes and would sit down and
Banana bread.
And over banana bread, she would just start telling me the things that she had been taught through her initiations and the things that were passed down to her. And
she was fully initiated in medicine and law. So she knew all the stories, she knew all of the cures, she knew all of it. And the one thing I think that she told us about those hieroglyphs was they are not the writings of my people. And she was very clear about whose writings they were.
Very clear. She actually did part of her initiation around the glyphs in that area, and she actually asked some of the people that were putting her through the initiations what were they about, and they essentially told her that they're nothing to do with our people and they're Egyptian.
Yeah.
And some of the other things she used to tell us about that was the glyphs look quite new, and that's probably part of the reason why it's hard to get traction on them being legitimate, because one of the counter arguments is they look too new
to be thousands of years old.
Yeah. But as it turned out, Auntie Bev would tell us that the glyph walls used to have a roof. There used to be a stone roof over it.
Wow. So they wouldn't
collapsed.
get weathered.
They're protected.
Only recently collapsed, I think, like in the last 20 years or so.
Probably about 40 odd years ago. And it's actually now the ground. And you can see that it's fallen in. It's the ground through that shaft area, no longer a roof. But you can see where the side rock and the now fallen roof sort of come together, and it's obviously a ceiling that's fallen.
Yeah.
There is a portion of the ceiling that's still up. But it was covered, and it was also protected in another way.
Yeah, so apparently the Aboriginal women used to go in there quite regularly and clean the glyphs with their urine, which sounds a bit odd, but what that used to do is actually on the sandstone, it would clean it, but it also harden it. So it wasn't so fragile and it wouldn't degrade as fast. So yeah, they used to go and clean the glyphs quite regularly, and And personally, I trusted anything this lady told me. She was, through her initiations on the Central Coast, but she did her final initiations in the centre of Australia with the fair dinkum elders out there. And she ended up doing her initiations and she came out cut very high. And when I say cut, I literally mean cut. When they go through their initiation, the skin was cut, and then a particular colour was placed in the cut bits, and the colour that she received in her cuts were of the highest order. So yeah, the things that she used to tell me about the glyphs, I put a lot more stock into that personally.
Than hoax theorists.
And
people who think they can read hieroglyphs with about 5 minutes practice.
In the Australian government.
Yeah.
So yeah, we've got Auntie Bev telling us this. We've got the Awians from Egypt telling us these are 100% Egyptian, no question about it. And then the third final clencher for me was finding out that the translation of the glyphs do talk about a mass burial, and before the translation came out, both Andy and I were aware where the actual mass burial was located.
But the Awians were not.
But we never shared that with the Awians. They had no idea that we knew that even existed. So when it turned out it was on the glyph wall that there was a mass burial, my mouth just dropped. I'm like, that was a bit of a clencher. I'm like, all right, this is pretty watertight now for me personally. So yeah, personally, I've got no shadow of a doubt that the Egyptians were in Australia. Auntie Bev used to tell me stories of things like Fort Denison, which is a fort in the middle of Sydney Harbour, which most Aussies would know. Probably those outside Australia have got no idea what I'm talking about. But literally in the middle of Sydney Harbour, there's a stone fort. And she used to tell me that that fort used to have a 300-foot obelisk coming out of it. And she said if you could ever get the sandstone from that tested, you would find that that sandstone actually came from Egypt.
In the same way that Egypt has boomerangs and things showing up in all of their museums and temples. Once you follow the archaeology, it's actually quite absurd to see.
It's really, really far, that's all.
But isn't there also the depiction of what looks very much like an original man on a wall in Egypt as well?
I have absolutely no idea on that front. No, there was carvings. There was actually carvings with boomerangs. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
No, but there's also this one with one leg up stance. You know.
Yeah. And it's the only culture that's ever used boomerangs. The fact that they've actually showed up in temples and now in museums in Egypt, all around the place is so telling. But even that script was telling. It spoke. The very first phrase just described an accord between the original people and the Egyptians, because that wasn't the first expedition of Egyptians that had been there and shared that space and shared their lives with the Aboriginal people. They'd been coexisting, as far as that story was concerned, for a very long time. It wasn't new that they came together and there was trust. It was I forget the wording. It was the ruler of the expedition and the chief of Penuland is what they referred to it. Have no deception was the very opening line, and that essentially describes that they come together in good faith and trust, and that they'd been living in trust. And it goes on to then tell a story of how that had ended for them.
Basically, just being human and getting along, right?
Spot on.
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, Auntie Bev used to tell us that they were here for quite some time, like into 1,000 years or so, and predominantly came to learn spirituality of the Aboriginals, but it appears that there was some sort of potential trade happening between the cultures as well.
Oh, certainly a cultural exchange, learning the language and exchanging language and culture and the whole thing, definitely.
Was there any other questions you had around this subject before? Because I want to get on to the boy's story.
Hold on.
Right, we've got a finger.
I got to share it because I could, you know me, I got to go looking, right? Picture for Egyptian boomerangs. And I just found a site
Sweet.
with shitloads of Egyptian boomerangs. And they're all going, of course, they're not really boomerangs. They're an Egyptian magic wand.
They're just big sticks. Of course they are.
Hold on. I'm gonna screen share this so you guys can see this. Bear with me. Come on. There we go. So this is a site. Here we go. Can you guys see this?
Yeah, the throwing sticks.
Original, and it says not a boomerang. This is a ceremonial wand. These also, those are Australian boomerangs down there apparently. But then they're showing pictures of, like, here we go, of like Egyptians obviously carrying boomerangs. Yeah, Egyptian throwing stick. Oh, there you go. It's not a boomerang. It's an Egyptian throwing stick.
Yeah.
Do they not know what the Australians do with boomerangs?
Yeah, apparently they are.
Throwing stick.
Yeah, I'll not say the words.
Did you see who started that one?
Pictures of Egyptian boomerangs, not boomerangs. Egyptian not boomerangs. They're just Egyptian throwing sticks that look like
It was quite interesting that you randomly found that person's website that you brought up. He was probably the main person peddling all the hoax theories and why they weren't Egyptian. And
oh, really? Okay, that was just the first website that just happened to pop up for me. I was looking at the images in Google Images.
Did you pick up who that was, Lisa?
No, I wasn't.
That was Malcontent's site.
Malcontent.
Steve Spillane. Yeah. Which I'm sure you've had lots of fun with him on YouTube over the years.
Enough said.
So there you go. Coincidentally, that was the website I pulled up. Yes.
Yes.
Nice one.
Okay, so
there is often a lot of agreement though between that's unfortunately the way it works in those archaeological circles, is that there'll be 80% agreement and then the fight happens with the other 20%. And there's a lot of, no, I won't go too far into
but
it.
it's the squeaky wheel that gets all the attention, right?
Yeah, and it can be a difficult arena to work in, we'll put it that way.
Well, here's the thing. So last summer, 2015, we did the Entangled Gathering, and I did the Origins Symposium. And we had Sam Osmanagic on, Bosnian pyramids.
Right.
And if you have a chance to listen to, because I had him walk us through the whole fucking story of him discovering the Bosnian pyramids and then him traveling the world, looking at all these hills, and his story about what, because basically he got experts from Egypt to come up, and these guys were like world-class experts from the University of Cairo, the whole bit, came up, spent time with them, went through the whole thing with this pyramid, and we're like, it's a fucking pyramid. It's a fucking pyramid is
They're
what
all
it is.
over the world.
And when the Egyptian guy went back to Cairo, all of a sudden, they were shut down. And he turned around, rescinded everything he said, the whole bit. I will actually post the link, Lisa, if you remind me, or someone in the chat room remind me, I'm going to post a link to that because I find it very interesting. Egypt keeps a really tight stranglehold on anything that is classified as Egyptian, i.e. glyphs or hieroglyphs or pyramids. They don't want anyone interfering with their monetary stream of money they got coming in.
That tourism
Right?
industry they got going on.
Exactly.
Well, there was, stuff I was reading years ago about all of that, and about how protected and corrupted the whole Egyptology thing is. And that there is another story which may actually give credit to the building of the pyramids and everything to another culture that came to Egypt, and it's Egypt's pride and joy. It's what it stands on, is this history, and if it's not theirs, then So they're certainly keeping secret. We know that.
Oh, it certainly made me wonder. I mean, they're finding these pyramids all over the world now. The ice melt in the Antarctic, and it's revealing pyramids everywhere. And given I suppose, the Egyptian theme through, New World Order and all of this ridiculous, it's all pyramids and all seeing eyes and all of this stuff. And it doesn't surprise me that they would shut down our history, potentially shut down our history by concealing all of this stuff and then keeping the one of them or a couple of them in Egypt and putting their gods underneath them, burying their pharaohs and having treating these, whatever they are, in that way to actually shut most of them down. And but then to create this idolatry out of putting their pharaohs in them, it's quite a strange thing. And then seeing that Egyptian narrative carry right through to the current day. There's a lot there. Definitely a lot of questions there.
Well, I mean, that's exactly it. Like the whole pyramids everywhere. And that was Dr. Osmanagich's thing. He says they are all over the world and they all share certain attributes that are you cannot question, like when you see these things come up. So
we've got one here called
the Australian government just did to you guys, because it wasn't just the news, it's the controllers behind the news that shut down that news story.
Of course.
The blocking of history, anyone who starts to uncover those pieces of history immediately gets blackballed. And I mean, that's what happened to Osmanagich. That's what happened to you guys when you all of a sudden, no, the story disappears, everything's gone. Because they got to try and perpetuate that false history that's been created. The pyramids, like you said, no, they're just burial chambers. Really, really fancy graveyards. That's what they are.
There hasn't actually ever been a body found inside one, though, has there? The sarcophagus is elsewhere, right?
Yeah, no, they're more symbolic kind of. Yeah, it's bizarre. Just bizarre. No, they've not. I don't think they've actually physically found bodies in there. They're more, what's the word? Sort of shrines as much as anything else, I guess.
Yeah, I just wrote their power plants, and I tend to agree. I think they're
knowing what the energy of those things, and they're all aligned north-south, perfectly north-south, east-west, and there's some well-documented science around what the energy of pyramids actually does. And so when you start to take that into account, what were these things, and what were these networks of things that were all the way around the world that got shut down?
I sort of see them as ancient Tesla towers.
Well, that's.
If you have them, this network of them right around the planet, and there's glyphs of the Egyptians holding lamps that are lit up that aren't plugged into anything. If they were plasma, perhaps, and created this plasma network around the planet, and you could just tap into that.
Yeah, and they got shut down. And at the centre of it, though, they've kept a few of them operational, where they've turned into shrines for their gods. It's just odd. It's a very strange thing, but the truth showing itself, and these pyramids are showing themselves. And I can't even drive now through New Zealand. I think it was New Zealand we were driving through a couple of months ago, and there's pyramids out in the middle of nowhere in New Zealand. And they're not even big ones. There's little ones, and you can just see that they've been overgrown. They've been left, and they've overgrown with grass, but they're perfect pyramids, and they're everywhere.
Well, it's funny because I'm in Gozo right now, which everyone called, the nickname of Gozo is the Rock. And the entire island is this big, and it does that. There's like very little flat land in Gozo. I mean, there's valleys that flatten out, but it basically is just this. And there are multiple hills that are just cone shapes. And they just come up and they go, and when you look at them, like, so you look on Google Earth and you do the aerial thing and you look down, they're all stepped.
Yeah.
As the farmers, I mean, they do, everything here is stepped because they have to take the farmland where they can. But these hills are all stepped. And when you look at it, it's like a descending rings all the way down. And Nick and I have just said for years, we've looked at these and gone like, oh, I so want to go digging. I so want to, because you cannot tell me that this island just naturally formed. Like a little kid went along and drew it and went like this.
Okay, so I think we've covered that.
Sure.
I want to ask you guys, because this has been a kind of a conversation over the last 6 weeks about people in the process of just becoming aware of the world they live in, right?
Yep.
It happens in waves, and we're in the midst of another wave. There was a wave, the flat earth thing kind of was one wave. This Mandela effect has been another really big wave.
With multiple crests.
And I think most of us get that there's a difference between awake and aware. Aware's a really good place to start. That's where you have to start.
You can start somewhere.
Yeah, you're going to start somewhere. So I wanted to ask you guys, did you grow up, you probably did, Ryan, with your parents, in an environment that... hi, Russ and Lee. So what happened?
Ryan has the coolest parents. I'm sorry, you're all jealous. Trust me, you're all jealous.
What was your wake
I chose pretty well, eh?
You've ended up with a website called Wake Up World. So
Yep.
What was your wake up?
Well, mine was quite gradual. There seems to be two trains of awakening. Either some of us been on path for quite some time. I think I started to realise there was more going on here probably about 20 years ago. So my awakening's been quite a long, drawn-out process. I started off by going through phases where I'd just be all about my spirituality and reading all these books and trying to delve deeper inside me, and it'd probably last 3 or 4 weeks, and then I'd have nothing to do with it for like 4 or 5 months, and then this wave would come over me again and I'd be back into it, and that kept perpetuating for quite a few years until it sort of just melded into the one where looking at my spiritual side became part of a daily process. So yeah, I went the long way, I guess.
Your awareness started very early, though.
Yeah, it was probably about 16 when I started to realise there was more going on around me than what I had first imagined. And as I said, I do have pretty special parents who have helped me a lot and have gone on their own spiritual path. But it wasn't like that growing up. Dad was a professional football player and was a typical footy player and liked to be with the boys and liked to drink. And
that was in the days when an athlete would come off the field and light a cigarette and crack open a beer.
Yeah.
They still do.
You just don't see it. So I think the three of us, because I'm an only child, and the three of us probably started awakening around the same time, I guess. We all took different paths. Mum went down the path of learning lots of different modalities, and so many I struggled to keep up with her healing modalities. And so yeah, mine was quite gradual, and probably by the age of about 25 it really started to kick in. But like a lot of people back over,
governments weren't what they say they are, or the banking system was the whole, that there was in fact a matrix and a system. When did that
came a lot later. That probably came in the last 6-7 years. Wake Up World's been around for just over 5 now. Probably since Wake Up World started is where it's really kicked off. For me personally, just dealing with so many different writers on so many different topics, I was literally forced, I guess, to go down many, many different rabbit holes. And
yeah, you think you're aware before you run a site like Wake Up. Wait until you see the stuff that's submitted.
So yeah, it was. I guess Wake Up World was born. It came out about May 2011. And it was essentially born from, I turned on the telly one night, the news was on, and it was the first time mass media news had literally pissed me off. I saw something on the telly and it made me so mad and angry. And it was essentially America was celebrating because they'd finally killed the CIA operative Osama bin Laden.
Again. 11th time, lucky.
So yeah, just knowing at that point that that was such propaganda and it was for political purposes and reasons and trying to move forward particular agendas, it pushed me to the point where I thought to myself, it's time to stop holding on to all of my thoughts and beliefs and stop worrying about what other people would think of me, because that is probably why I kept my mouth shut for quite some time and didn't really converse my deepest thoughts, I guess, with friends, and out of fear, I guess. I didn't want to be ostracized, and but that pushed me to the point where I'm like, I can't sit on my hands anymore and I can't keep my mouth shut. And so I thought, all right, well, I'm going to speak my truth. And at the end of the day, it was only my truth. I'm not saying that that was the truth of everything. It was just my truth. And I thought I need to get this off my chest. So yeah, I sat at my desk and created my first website and put a few articles together. And it was quite a nervous time for me. English, grammar, that type of stuff's never been my strong point. I've always been a little bit dyslexic. So that was one thing I had to push through. I needed to not worry about that. So yeah, we eventually pressed the go button, and after, I don't know, about a month, I probably ran out of things to say. I got everything off my chest. It was quite a cathartic experience.
All of the first posts on the site are all looking at things like Osama bin Laden and 9/11 and really going down those very political American rabbit holes. Really how it started.
Yeah, but luckily by a month in, I was starting to get emails from writers all over the world saying, I love what you're doing. I just want to be part of it. Can I start submitting new articles? And it really started to grow from that. The submissions we got started just to really ramp up, and to the point now where we're just absolutely overloaded with submissions. It's a bit hard to keep up with this all.
It's impossible.
There's probably a few hundred articles in our drafts that are waiting to be actioned.
Yeah, it's a speaker on now.
So in other words, you need some assistance. You need someone. You need someone who wants to be like, your unpaid intern.
Well, this is where I was really lucky, because after a few years of doing this by myself.
Yep.
Can you guys hear something else?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, someone's having problems.
Yep.
Beth, we can hear you. You're on. She's on the phone to Zoom.
All right. Thanks.
Hey, Beth, we can hear you.
Thank you.
Must have
I've got her muted.
She's on the phone to Zoom, so what's going on?
And my mouse, my touchpad, has decided to die on me. So I'm struggling to go through to find her, and it's like my mouse is doing this.
I forget where I was up to.
We were just talking.
Oh yeah, so after a few years, it was getting way more than I could handle by myself. I probably should have told you what I was doing before Wake Up World. I was in corporate. I was working for Citibank. I was a corporate service manager. Yeah, I know.
In the eye of the hurricane.
So yeah, I looked after a team that was responsible for customer service and administration, about $1 billion worth of corporate accounts, and it was absolutely soul destroying. I would wake up each morning and put a suit on, and as you can see, I'm really not the suit type of person, but I would wake up and I don't know how many times I said to Andy, I feel like a fraud. I feel like a fraud in a suit.
You looked good in a suit.
Oh. Thanks.
But he was a fraud.
You looked good, fraudulently good, but you looked good.
You look great.
So yeah, I did well at my job for quite a few years, but it was getting soul destroying, and to the point where my quality of work was getting quite poor, and my boss took me into a meeting room one day and said, I've got two options, get back to the standard I was or quit. So pretty much right there on the spot, I quit. I'm like, I can't do this anymore. And I came home and I apologised to Andy. I'm so sorry I didn't run this past you first, but I've quit my job. Please look after me for a while.
Which I did.
Which you did.
Good for you.
So I suppose my process was a little bit different. I came from corporate as well too, but very, very different timeline to Ryan in that Aware didn't start for me and Awake didn't start for me until A Dark Night of the Soul caught up with me about 5 years ago. I was one of the most heavily indoctrinated. I did really well in education and I did really well in those sorts of corporate jobs and played the game really well. And for some reason, indoctrination really stuck with just the nature of my being until it all fell to pieces really quickly. The mask fell off and I sat crying on the couch for 4 days once I realised the horror of the universe around me, because that's what it felt like at that time. Like, it was ridiculous. I'd see a bird eat a moth and burst into tears at the horror of the universe, but also really recognise the mechanics of the system at the same time as, like, it all just blew up all in one go. And until that point, I was one of those people that Ryan was defending against. By keeping things to himself, he didn't want to be considered a nut job, and that wasn't just because with his friends, that was also with me. I didn't get it. I didn't understand what he was talking about. He'd drop hints and kind of try to lure me along and see if I'd get it, and I didn't understand what he was talking about, and I didn't want to know, and the guards would go up until it got to that point where the guard couldn't go up anymore and the head exploded. And once I dusted myself off that couch and realised I needed some help with Wake Up World, that was where it really started for me. So it's a strange thing. Where I talked about being a fraud in corporate, I actually felt like a fraud doing Wake Up World for the first year or two, because people see you as a teaching website where you're sharing all of this information and this knowledge. For me, I was learning. It wasn't a teaching thing. I was, collaborating with all of these amazing people and really insightful or intuitive or really well connected, and all of these people who knew stuff. And that was where my learning curve started, and just had to be very discerning and intuitive myself in that way about what worked and what was right and what wasn't. But for me, Wake Up World was a learning tool until it stopped being.
I'm sure.
And then it sort of lost its energy for a little bit, and then it came back again.
So yeah, I'm very grateful that Andy stepped up, because Andy is an absolute wordsmith and is now the editor of Wake Up World, and there's no way I could do what he does.
And vice versa, though. We work kind of well in that way.
Yeah.
I can't do any of the technical and all of that other behind the scenes stuff. I just deal with our writers and deal with our content in front of house, and then deal with the reaction, we'll call it, on Facebook to the things that we post, and not argue with people, but I like to push people's buttons and actually be a bit challenging in our Facebook page, rather than what a lot of our contemporaries do, which is just let the conversation run itself. I was never the sort to sit back and go, but that's rubbish, or I don't agree, and not chime in. So Wake Up World on Facebook became quite a vocal entity as well too, and that was me basically mopping up the things that I'd chosen to post. So it was a really interesting loop that way for me, having not known anything and woken up really quickly, and then being in the deep end, Wake Up World, and then having to not just decide on the content, but then go in and bat for it and defend it. And that was a real learning curve, and something that was when I knew I was onto the right thing, when I could actually go in there and defend those choices and stand up for what we were talking about, and
actually believe in what you were doing.
Yeah. And I can't do what I don't believe in. That's why I walked out of corporate as well too. I used to work Ryan worked for Citibank, I worked for Thomson Reuters, which is the largest media organisation in the world. So, we couldn't have picked the two biggest, and we did. We both floated our way through corporate, up in the biggest finance and media companies in the world, until it just became intolerable for the same reasons. We were both selling our souls, and both walked out when the time was right. Oh,
have you lost us?
Oh, you bet.
No, you kind of just warbled for a second.
Right.
But that's the reason why you guys are such a good team, because look like where you come from and where you bring it all together. It's fucking awesome.
Yeah.
Well, you get some skills doing corporate. You've got to think quick and learn to get people and deal with shit. And there's a lot of skills that we've had to apply to it, and even just keeping our head,
Deadlines and shit.
dealing with stress under pressure and working ridiculous hours. I think 2013 when the site really took off, because we'd really tapped into that 2012 awakening vein, and that was really where things took off. So between 2013 and 2014, we were basically bunkered down. We spent every waking hour working, and we'd get up and work, put a fire on, light a cigarette or whatever, and go to work. And that was our day. And then you'd go to sleep and do it all over again until we sort of got a handle on things and got to the point where we could control what we were doing and got some people to help us and all of that. But that was our lives for the first couple of years, was just reacting and dealing with our own, managing our own stress and trying to have a relationship as well. So I'm sure some people don't realise that we're co-founders of Wake Up World, but we've been a couple for 14 years as well too. So that added a whole different dimension, I suppose, to what we were doing.
14
sometimes
years.
it's...
Well, congratulations.
Sorry?
I didn't realise it was that long. 14 years.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, 15 years in September.
No, 14.
Oh, 14 years, sorry. Time's flown. I know his birthday, though.
I got to ask, with both of you,
Yeah.
in your own spiritual journeys, how far down the New Age rabbit hole did you go?
The New Age. The New Age, well, personally for me, the New Age had me hook, line and sinker for quite a long time. I probably bought into it from, I don't know, a few decades ago, and it's probably...
When I came along?
Yeah, it's taken me a while to understand what the New Age movement was about and where the creation of that came from and who the people behind the creation of the New Age movement was, like the people like Aleister Crowley. So yeah, I was probably sucked into that for quite some time, and it took me a while to wake up to what that was all about.
For me, it's just not the problem I have with, I suppose, the New Age philosophy is it's not integrated and it's not nearly comprehensive enough. It's a small portion of a great big pie. The way I see it, that we do need to ground what we're doing in love, and we do need to understand the vibrational reality of what we're dealing with. But that's a portion of it. We're also dealing with some satanic assholes who have actually got things locked down with military, and financial systems and government, and all of these things going on. And on top of which, at a very spiritual level too, and we figured out the hard way too, you put yourself out, as you guys would have, you put yourself out on the chopping block and do this kind of a thing out in the public sphere, and you're not just subject to criticism of human beings, and you get entities come after you, and you've actually got to start dealing literally with the dark. And learn how to take on the dark, and you've got to acknowledge that dark before you can actually do anything about it or defend yourself against it. And there is that light and dark. It's not all just love and light. There is also the shadow that we need to work through, and there is a really dark element there. And I think pretending that doesn't exist and just loving and meditating our way to the solution isn't the way to do it. That's how we ground ourselves, to keep fighting the good fight and to take on the system and call bullshit when we see it. But it's not enough. It's not enough just to eat healthy and meditate our way to a better world when we've got satanic psychopaths in charge of things. It just simply doesn't work that way. So for me, it really just seems to steer people away from action. They kind of
Yeah, I've got
take
a
the
few, I've got
stuff
a
and they
few
don't
problems with
the
what's
hard
going on
stuff.
right now too. I mean, you've got, yes, I think the New Age movement was a huge stepping stone, you know, on everybody's journey.
Yeah.
And I don't regret all the things I've done and all the, you know, roads I've gone down by any means. But this idea that this very, very embedded idea in the New Age movement that ultimately you've created this, right? That you've got to take responsibility and let these guys off the hook because they're only there, they only exist, they're only doing what they do because you actually created them in the first place.
Yeah.
I've got a problem with that one. Like David Icke, he's another person who has been huge, you know, in terms of waking people up, and he's brought so much to the table. But what frightens me right now is that he takes people on these 10-hour journeys full of information, brilliant stuff.
Yep.
But the final message is don't feed them because all the negative emotions, fear, hate, anger, blah, 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 that's what they feed off. So don't feel those things because you need to starve them. You know, don't feel those things. And what we were talking about the other night, you know, there's a difference between being a pacifist and being passive.
Spot on.
Yep.
Yeah.
We can be a pacifist in the sense of our energetic and emotional and mental state and all of that, but that doesn't mean roll over.
No, that means non-violent resistance.
Yes.
The resistance is an action. That's not something that you just are, or it's not an emotion. It's actually something that you do.
Yep.
And it's the same thing that we've had. I mean, it is overwhelming, and I think that's why people cling on to those kind of philosophies where it makes them feel better about this overwhelming world that they see around them. But the advice I've always given people is just pick one thing and be the best at it.
Yep.
You know, whatever your focus is, pick the one thing and chip away at it and chip away at it. And we're seeing people do that. You know, there's geoengineering websites. There are people who make themselves expert in any given area, and they make it a focus and they make it their life's work. And that's how people actually make a difference. But I think that New Age movement really feeds that part of people that is overwhelmed by it. It is frightening to actually look down that rabbit hole and realise how much is going on around us and how much control there is. I'm sure it makes a lot of people feel better, but it also unfortunately makes people, I believe, a little inactive sometimes. That we shouldn't confront the system, we should just build something new. We actually need to do both. We need to stand and look government in the eye and say, we see you and we're not putting up with this en masse, as well as building the new. The two sort of need to complement each other, and that's why I say the New Age movement for me, it's not bullshit on its own, it's just a very small part of the bigger picture, and when it's taken in isolation, that's when it becomes, dangerous isn't the right word, but that's where it becomes a problem. It starts to engender complacency.
You know, Mark Passio is really, really vocal about the fact that the bad guys are incredibly committed. They're committed. They're organised, and they are tight. It's a tight community, and they're super tight. They're super organised, and we're not.
No, we're fragmented still. Even alternative media is fragmented.
Division, separation is constantly fed in. As soon as community and solidarity and all of those things start to build, something comes in to break that down.
Distractions. Like you say, the separation, the division, the distraction.
Yeah.
And we've seen it time and time again. And it's the closer you get to truth, and so much
someone just appears who's just there to never mind. Let's not even go down that rabbit hole. This is in every I rant about religion all the time. Having come from a religious background and brought up as a very religious person. So I bluster and I rant about religion all the time. But I do appreciate that there is good, every religion out there has some very good pieces to it. And when you take the pieces and you apply it to your own life, those pieces can be wonderful and help you grow spiritually, consciously, on every level. It's the whole dogma, whether it's Christianity, Islam, Buddhist, fucking New Age, doesn't matter, is where it all falls down. But like I say, the diamonds, the crystals are in there. They're perfect, and you just pull out the pieces that, for you in that moment, resonate, right? And that help you on your journey. And it doesn't mean you keep them forever. Maybe you go past them and you lay them aside and you go on looking for the next piece that helps you along on your journey.
And that's how all control mechanisms work. It's the same as disinformation. There's always, 5% bullshit embedded in 95% truth, because people won't buy the 5% bullshit unless it's couched in truth. And I see religion, to your description, there is some real gems in there. There's just bullshit in here as well too,
Well, and that's the whole, you got to do the balancing act where you got to go through it, and you got to be able to pull out the gems and pull out those little threads of truth and figure them out, and then just throw all the bullshit back out the window.
Well, look at this stuff the last 12 months has been extraordinary, right? We've had the whole flat earth debate, and that has brought out so many good questions, right? That's got people thinking about things that they've never questioned before, and things that should be questioned. And it's not so that you have to automatically come to the conclusion that the earth is flat. It's not about that for me. It's about it's the questions of whether or not these space agencies are full of shit.
Yeah.
Whether NASA, who costs $60 a day, is
and I have a new article that I'm going to be doing in
Photoshop. What? What?
I'm not going to get into it on the show, but there's a piece came out by NASA on space.com just yesterday, and Nick and I read it, and our heads went all over the wall. It was like, you're telling me they actually expect people to believe this bullshit.
Well, you have to tell me now.
Go on.
They've moved Greenwich Mean Time, the prime meridian.
Yeah.
They've moved it because, measurements are off by 390 meters, whatever. And now it's moved. And then the whole article is this whole bit about how basically this whole line that these set lines, longitude and latitude, and things like the prime meridian are now off. They're not quite where they should be.
Is that why it's about to move nearly 2 meters?
Listen, it goes into, and some of the little things that they say. Number one, they talk about the fact that the planet isn't really round. It's actually, kind of bulges out at the middle, right? And then they go on to try and talk
about photos of a perfect globe.
Oh, I know. Isn't that funny? Then they go on. No, this is really good, because you talk about not being able to make up your mind which theoretical piece about gravity you want to quote. These lines are off because gravity, of course, changes depending on whether you're, up at the poles or around the equator.
It used to be.
NASA fucking said that. I can't make this up. Now, is this a test? Like, I looked at Nick and was like, okay, is this a test? Is there like a camera watching me right now? If I pass this test? Like, really? So anyways, I'm going to be doing a Transpicuous News. I was going to do it this afternoon, but I've run out of internet at home, which is why I'm at a friend's house. And as I said, I'm going to just lose my shit, and it's going to be a rant of epic.
Looking forward to it.
Okay, so questions like that need to be asked. How legit? Is this a bunch of, 16-year-old boys in a dark room somewhere getting seriously stoned, playing Dungeons and Dragons, and every now and then I'm going to write this article, and I'm going to tell them this. Let's see if they buy it. Yeah. At the cost of $60 million a day. That's just NASA.
That's a newsroom. Yeah, that's great.
So, you don't have to come to the conclusion that the Earth is flat. But let's just question for a minute some of the shit we're told.
Yeah.
No?
Oh, I'm loving those theories at the moment. We've posted articles recently on flat Earth, hollow Earth, growing Earth is another theory that the planet actually keeps expanding. And like you say, I just love the fact that it makes you actually question the fundamentals of what are we even standing on. And if you don't know what you're standing on, what else do you know?
Exactly.
How can you tell me that you know? Like,
exactly. Well, that's. Someone's writing an article. Someone contacted me from Vice.com about the Mandela effect.
oh yes.
Basically, like, what is it? Sum it down. I'm like, I can give you my opinion for this moment. It'll change tomorrow. You know, as new pieces come out, and you go, okay, well, that was okay. I've got a new opinion now, and that's
an indicator of intelligence. To be able to shift your beliefs with information coming and going is an absolute sign of intelligence. I think that's the flip side of some of those theories, like flat Earth and that sort of things. Is for an element of people who are following it, it becomes its own dogma. It becomes almost like a religious fanaticism in some regards, and no matter what fact is presented to you, the ears are shut and there's no listening and no comprehension of it. And that's some of what we've come up against. Is for some it's actually a mind closer and not a mind opener. For the most, it's a mind opener, but.
Well, what we've seen so far, that I've seen at least, the things that sort of broke the internet would be the flat Earth, followed by Mandela.
Yeah.
Mandela effect. Or the what the fuck effect, or the, what else have we called it? Can't remember. The quantum effect. And now this recent thing over the last week or two is this, the Toto effect, thank you, is this video that's gone absolutely viral about the trees. Now it's called There Are No Forests on the Flat Earth. The title is completely bogus and probably just trying to grab some catchy tag words, right? But the response from people about this video has been extraordinary. Yeah, people have been in tears, people have been moved, people have been angry, people, you name it. Now I know you guys tried to watch it, but you really struggled with the language, and it's a tough one because that guy's accent's really strong.
It was. With the key words, every time I needed to understand that word, it was the one word I could not get my head around.
Someone has done a voiceover.
Oh, wow, really?
Someone has done an English voiceover. Guys, in the Unfuck, it was posted in the Unfuckers room yesterday. If someone can find that version that was posted in Unfuckers that is got an English voiceover of the entire video, can you please send Lisa and I the link? Because it's real. I think it's. For me, I have limited bandwidth right now and almost no internet, so I can't watch any videos. So everyone's talking about this video, and I can't watch it. So
I've actually got it up. I can show you a couple of images. If anybody in the chat room knows of any really good timestamps that I could go to, I'm happy to follow that, but
now, okay, so I want to ask a question here of everyone who's seen it. Someone sent me, because I couldn't obviously watch the video, they sent me a little 3-minute video that talks about the trees and it talks about the mountains and the cutoff, like basically tree stumps versus these big messes and escarpments, etc. Yeah, so they used a lot of these pictures actually that you're showing, Lace.
Yep.
In this very short 3-minute video. Well, I laughed because, of course, I haven't had, like that one right there. I'm here in Gozo. Do you know what we have in Gozo? Besides cone-shaped fucking hills everywhere, we have those rocks that just come straight up and look like tree stumps. And Nick and I, on Sunday, before I watched that video, took the kids out to the salt pans and we're actually climbing on one of those. And I came back into the house and saw that video 5 minutes later and watched it. And we're like, oh my God, like that's right there. And that's the other hill behind us over there. There's another one. It looks just like a tree stump. And all the mountaintops here are flat, as if someone has just cut off massive tree stumps. Everything is
That's
flat.
a tree. What
Yep.
you're looking at is
That's
a tree.
petrified. It's a petrified tree.
Yeah.
Petrified wood.
So, yeah, the response to this video is one of those things that's just been like bizarre. There's been so many shows done on it. There's been remakes or mirrors of the video. There's been loads of conversations and articles. There's been so many threads on Facebook. It's just been phenomenal. This has really touched people.
Yeah, I've had it sent to me by at least 30 people. At least 30 times it's been sent to me or posted on my wall.
Yeah, mind blown is the most common written response. And the sense that, you know, when you look at the Grand Canyon, when you look at the Blue Mountains here, when you look at those sort of formations all around the world, there is a sense that it's an old quarry. I mean, if you look at the size of the hole that we can make with modern mining machinery, because this also goes into the implication of giants and things like that as well, this video.
Yep.
And we know throughout history there's been the talk of the 9-footers and the 12-footers and the 40-footers and all of that sort of thing. I mean, if you're a 40-footer, what kind of hole could you make then? I've had a personal...
How big is your backhoe?
Yeah. I've had a personal experience with this in a way because I was taken out with Sonia that the guys mentioned earlier. We went out, I think it was 2011, out to the Blue Mountains. And there was a group of us, we were taken off the beaten track. There is actually a public walking track that you guided through. We were taken well off this beaten track into a very eerie area of the Blue Mountains. There was no vegetation. There were no trees. There was actually ground shrubs. Nothing grew there. There were no animals. There was a bird that greeted us sort of at the entrance to this area, and that was the last animal life we saw until we came back out through that area and there was a bird again. There were, and it's one of those things where I've got the most amazing photographs and they're on probably 2 computers ago. What we found were troughs, like perfectly carved troughs that ran right down the sides of mountains and side of hills. They'd been broken up into sections, just like a smelting sort of situation, right? There was melted rock. There was, at one point, I stood on the edge of a precipice, and as I was standing there looking at this, it's like, this just looks like a mining pit. Just looks like I'm standing at the edge of a mine. And then I realized I was standing in something. There were walls came up around me, and I just had this feeling that I was in something. And I went and jumped up on the wall and looked down, and it was a perfect footprint. And the footprint would have been 12 foot long. I'm just trying to measure. Yeah. No, maybe 10 or 12 feet long. But it was a perfect footprint, as if a very large, very heavy foot had gone into soft sand, like, you know, in sandstone sand, essentially.
Yeah.
It came up between the toes. You could see, like, the print on the toes. It was a footprint. There's no one's going to tell me anything otherwise, right? And that blew my mind. But then there was an eerie feeling. The place did not feel nice. Didn't feel good at all. The guys wanted to keep going around the next bend and over the next hill, and the women all were like, "Yeah, we're done."
No, we're done. We want to go home now, thanks.
And all the women were sick. We got home. And Sonia, who we spoke of, she was the worst. She ended up in hospital. Now, we were all perfectly healthy when we went there, and all the women, and only the women, were incredible by the end of the day, for several days. It was a very eerie thing, but the idea that it was a quarry, an old mining pit, was just so evident to me it wasn't funny. and it was toxic. It was now toxic. It was at least energetically toxic.
Because
Huh.
there was no wildlife around here, Lisa. Is that right?
There was no wildlife.
Yeah.
And there was nothing taller than this growing on the ground. Just shrubs, you know, just low-lying shrubbery. No plants, no trees, no flowers, nothing. And it was a very strange place.
Well, Lisa, that's interesting because, you know, we talk about how the universe puts you where you're supposed to be.
Yep.
And I ended up back in Gozo again. And we're looking at Gozo and we're looking at things like, this is obviously, Malta is one of those places that's got an incredible energy, like an amazing energy. The two islands, especially Gozo, more than Malta, the main island. You have what are supposed to be, as acknowledged by history, the oldest temples in the world are in Malta. I am literally 2 kilometers away from one of the oldest temples on the planet, purportedly, according to historians. You have really strange shit here, like these rocks that just come up and go like this. And I found a site by someone who's obviously Maltese, talking about these being created, these rocks. That basically, like, for example, they've got a sandstone top, but everything underneath is a very different texture, and there being iron rods in the stone. Some of it looks like nuggets and stuff, but there's what looks very much like just iron rods randomly embedded in this rock that we visited on Saturday. There's no iron anywhere on the island. There is no iron. There's no iron anywhere. It should be mined anywhere.
It's not only constructed, but it's imported.
You have an ancient, obviously. There are cart ruts here that no one can explain.
Did you say car wrecks?
Cart ruts is what they call them, carved into the bedrock, and they're like tracks, and they're like a double tracks that run around the countryside.
They also go underneath the sea level, though. We saw a documentary on that a couple of weeks ago.
And these cart ruts kind of appear around the world in different places, but there's no explanation because the whole Gozitan Maltese explanations, of course, well, they're just the cart path, and thousands of years people taking their stuff up and down the hill wore holes in the rock. Yeah, I don't fucking think so. They're in solid bedrock and they're cut out tracks.
Yeah, it's square. It's square cut too.
They're square cut. I mean, it was obviously cut on purpose. The measurements just don't add up to anything that would be logical, and no one has any idea even how old they are. Like, there are some who, of course, put it within that realm of Christianity of, oh, well, they're 3,000 years old or whatever, how to fit within that the paradigm of accepted history. And then there are those who are like, no, these things are like thousands and thousands and thousands of years old. So there's all this really, really strange stuff here. And everything is terraced. Like I said, everything. Now, the farmers terrace the fields because when you are trying to farm on fucking hills and valleys like this, you have to create. But the entire island is terraced. The entire fucking island. Like, everywhere. Every hill is terraced. And some of the stone walls that hold them up are ancient. Like, they're Roman walls. At the very least, known Roman walls that hold up these terraces. And you sit there and you go, same thing. I was like, oh, history. Not telling us, because there's obviously
these troughs in the Blue Mountains. The official story is that it's just a natural rock formation, which is really, really weird. Because you can see that they actually sit on top, for one. And we actually had a tape measure out and measured. They were exactly, I think it was 9 centimetres each side. Exactly. Right?
Huh.
So the side, and they were just like that. And they were perfect all the way down. I mean, they were broken up into sections over time.
Yeah.
They're just broken up like that. But they were, and they went, I don't know, a couple of 100 metres. And
Well, you can expect from me, Lise, there's going to be lots of reports on this. Moosh has got a friend here who apparently he's a walker. And he has walked every square inch of this island and Malta. And he takes people on walking tours. And this guy will apparently take you to all the shit that's not talked about. Take you to, like, you want to see cart ruts? He's like, oh, I'll go. What cart ruts do you want to see? Let's go. And off. And temples that aren't even acknowledged as temples. This guy has got major mappings out of places that have not been acknowledged as temples, and yet are there. So I'm going to be doing lots of walking tours come winter because it's way too fucking hot to do it right now.
yeah, history is not as we've been taught.
No.
But there's
Definitely.
video.
When we saw the same thing in Kariong, we were dealing in, behind the glyph walls or underneath the glyph walls, there's a whole shaft system, and we've been into it, and it's all square cut and obviously constructed, and some of it's a tight squeeze. You've actually got to go through these kind of manhole-sized things, but it's all square cut and perfectly formulated and perfectly measured, and all very perfect right angles. Stones all placed on top of each other, and then it opens up into a massive room, and then there's another shaft that goes off in another perfectly constructed room with all right angles. But we're again told that there's nothing to see here and it's all just a natural formation and it must have just been rocks falling on each other. Right angles. Perfect construction.
It just happened to fall like that.
Of course. On top of each other. Perfect pillars and everything. It's just amazing. But there's nothing to see there. And the juxtaposition against the hieroglyph wall doesn't tell us anything, of course, either.
Well, I mean, this is it. I'm actually toying. I'll say this out loud. I wasn't going to say anything out loud yet, but I'm going with or organizing the next Origins. But this time will be a physical conference.
Cool.
And holding it here in Gozo, and getting some people organized to come over to talk about this stuff, because right now it keeps coming back to the fact of history is so fucking wrong, and so obviously we are being lied to on every level of history, that we need to go back and really start reanalyzing all of this shit, like all of this shit. So yeah, I am looking at organizing something here in Gozo. I have the connections to be able to find all the venues that would be necessary. We'll get it put together. It'll probably be early next year, but I'm definitely going to work up putting this together. So,
well, you said it now.
So
it's out there.
This is
I
supposed.
said it now. It's out there. That's right.
Dee, have you seen this image?
Yep.
Is that shit? Yeah.
It certainly looks to be a tree stump. Look at it.
Wow.
Yeah. And there's one other image I wanted to find you guys. Because he goes into the hexagonal honeycomb. Yep.
And of course, Nick has done major studies about that whole hexagonal honeycomb thing as well. This is a huge piece, right?
Another nice example. Okay, these things.
You got me Kariong photo. Yeah.
Apparently that's lava. That's I didn't realize this. I did not realize that the official word on the formation of these sort of things was lava.
Really? There's a similar thing at Kariong we're about to show.
Yeah, I've got a rock platform at Kariong that looks quite similar to what you just showed.
That's, I think, supposedly lava. And
when you're finished doing yours, Lisa, I'll show you the picture that I put together here in Gozo.
That's what lava looks like.
Yeah, that's what lava looks like.
Yeah.
There's a comparison.
Yeah. It was lava that was cookie cuttered. That's what it was.
So
all perfect hexagon.
Yeah, lava.
Wow.
And lava, apparently.
Uh-huh.
Wow.
lava, and lava, apparently.
Hexagonal pillars.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I think the premise of this film is that these are the fibres of the trees, the hexagonal silicon-based fibres.
So what is this then?
Not lava. Because a lot of these things are actually found where there is no volcanic activity. There's no lava anywhere.
Yep.
And look at that, yeah.
Wow. Wow, that's amazing.
Oh, I'm going to be going to take a whole shitload of pictures around here once things cool off a bit.
Oh, these ones.
There's some weird rock formations around here.
So supposedly that is lava that was dripping and just dripped and stopped. But I didn't realise that that's what the official word was on what these things are.
Wow.
Had anyone told me that, I would have gone, well, no. Even without seeing that video, that doesn't look right. Okay.
Well,
So
I actually said to Nick, after watching that one little 3-minute video, I'm going to be doing some geology work this winter. I don't have enough geology background. I've got some real basics, mostly in like crystals and semi-precious type stuff. But I can see that I'm going to be going deep into geology this winter. That's going to be probably my winter project because, yeah, some interesting fucking shit. Here, I want to show you. Or boys, do you guys want to show that picture that you said you have?
Share.
Oh.
Does that come through?
Yeah.
So yeah, this is a whole rock platform. So this is probably about, I don't know, 800 meters from Gosford Glyphs.
And it goes, it's massive too. It goes and goes and goes.
And that's a bit of a close-up. It seems to be a repeating pattern that almost looks like flowers.
Yeah.
We've had geologists.
Oh, that's interesting.
Geologists have no idea what they're looking at. As unfortunately,
flagstones. I'm sorry. It looks like flagstones. It looks like it's deliberately placed there. If regardless of what we're talking about with the trees, et cetera, you can't tell me that's a natural formation. It looks like it's either grown there or it's been deliberately placed there, just like flagstones.
Yeah. Every time we took a geologist out on the site, anywhere in Kariong, and there was a whole pile of different sites that we went to, some by the ocean, some up in the mountains, and every time we showed them these weird things, we just got stumped looks. They've got no concept of how to explain it based on current geological understanding, so we just don't know what.
Yeah, so this is really close to the glyph site, those particular. But yeah, nature does really weird stuff out at Kariong. I got some photos if you want to see some weird nature stuff.
Yeah, go for it.
Oh, Dee.
Yeah.
Oh, Dee's got something she wants to have a look at too.
Oh, hold on. Yeah, we'll flip back. I'll show you. I'll just show you the one picture. I pulled it together as an amalgamation. Hold on, just give me a quick second. I'm going to have to try and pull it up first. Crap, where did I put it? Gozo. There we go.
Oh, that's an interesting comment. Looks like skin cells as well.
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to say to you. If you ever looked at epithelial cells, that's exactly what it looks like. It's epithelial cells. Very, very interesting. Okay, hold on. I'm going to show you this. Hold on. So this is the big white rock that we all climbed up. Well, not to the top, because it's way too big to climb to the top. It was excruciatingly windy that day, so we almost had children tethered to us to make sure we didn't get blown off the cliff, because it's about a 100-foot drop on the other side of that. But you can see, again, so the one guy who wrote this said it's all different rock layers. So down here below, you have limestone, which is the pale yellow you see at the very bottom. Then you have this basalt gray rock And then on top of it, you have a perfect slab of sandstone. And it is slightly bigger at the top, like a tabletop, almost as if it's been placed there. It's actually quite humorous. Okay, and then the other one is, this is 3 of the different ones that we have here. So this one here is one of the ones, and you can see there's the stump, and it's got a big statue of Jesus on the top of it now. Yay. Yeah, as you do. This is another one. This rock here that you see here on the left-hand side, that is directly behind me right now. As in, I can look out Musha's back bedroom window, and it is right smack there. And we're going to go climbing it, because there's all kinds of interesting looking nooks and crannies on that one. But I just wanted to show you the big panoramic below is what Gozo looks like. It's hills with big-ass flat tops, just like that. Every hill has got a big flat top to it.
Even the one in the background on the left has got one. They're everywhere.
Yep. Well, Moosh always joked, as a child, she used to say that in her imagination, it was a big giant came along with a big hammer and went bonk, 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 and flattened all the tops of all the mountains. And they're all exactly the same level. It's not like this. It literally looks like a giant, I always say, came along with a scimitar and went whoosh, and just cut off the whole tops of all the mountains, or whatever it is, directly straight across.
That's interesting that they're all at the same level.
They're all at the same fucking level.
Okay, how does that get explained mainstream?
I don't think it does.
Do they just pretend you didn't ask that question?
Next question. No, we're not answering that. I didn't hear you. Your mic cut out. Yeah, that's right.
Oh, wow. That's bizarre. Okay, so show us some funky photos of Gosford.
Oh, it's nature stuff.
All right, so this is...
As it cools off, we are going to be doing some major hiking around Gozo, because there's caves everywhere. I mean, everywhere there's caves. And the one cave that I'd really like to get permission to go down, I just found out the weekend we arrived, we went to go take the kids to, it's called Calypso's Cave, and it's supposed to be the cave where Ulysses from the Odyssey was captured by the nymph Calypso, is here on Gozo. And this cave is so deep, they finally blew the roof. They put dynamite in and blocked the entire entry, because so many people have gotten lost, gone down into the cave, and never come back.
Oh, no.
Never come back. Like, a whole group of school, like a teacher with all the school kids disappeared in the 60s or 70s when they all went down into this cave, and they just never came out. And there are rumors that these caves go so deep that some of them actually cross under the ocean to the main island and to other areas of Europe and North Africa.
I tell you
You
what,
can get lost in it. How far does it go?
sitting here thinking, what's next? It's like, it's almost, the mind-blowing stuff is almost weekly now.
Mm.
Yeah.
Show me the strange things that nature does at Kariong.
But listen,
All right. What did he say? No.
No, haven't.
So yeah, these are just, there's a lot of stuff around the glyph site besides the glyphs, and
Stuck with those.
nature does bizarre stuff. You can't throw a stick around there without hitting some ancient Aboriginal carvings.
Literally.
And the other weird thing around Kariong is the stone circles in the ground that were found, which is really interesting. By the time we left the Central Coast and moved up here, I think I had counted about 5,000 of these very weird-looking stone circles. I'll show you a few. Does that come through?
Natural?
Yeah. So they do. They're either bulbous or they're flat, but yeah, they're always round. small, can be the size of my finger, can be the size of my hand, bigger than my foot.
Can be depressed into the ground, can stick above the level with a line
If I
around
remember
it.
correctly, wasn't there one of these formations on these rocks that we found that day that corresponded to a constellation?
Yeah, so one day friend Gav, who you went to the Blue Mountains with, who actually I think took you to that site, we were just wandering, trying to find all these different rock platforms around the glyph site. So we found this one, and it must have had, it had hundreds of these stone circles around it. And then,
no, there's a couple of thousand was the tally.
Yeah, it was immense, and it was just on this. I tried to find photos of it today, but I'm not too sure where they've ended up. But yeah, there was the train of thought that there was potentially it was like a universal, it's like a universal star map, and we tried to map all these circles. It was quite hard due to this particular platform was quite undulating, so it was hard to get direct measurements between all these circles. But we had a astroarchaeologist that was helping us along, and he was quite confident with one section that we sent to him that he could see, not Pleiades. Oh, I'll come back to you. He was quite certain he could see a constellation in part of the...
he matched it to a star system, a specific star system. At a specific point in time too.
Mm.
Yeah, right.
So yeah, there was definitely a train of thought that was actually a star map. I heard a bit of a different story from some original elders that it was more along the lines of it was a platform, and each time somebody got initiated, they essentially got a circle, and they'd go and create the circle. So yeah, not 100% sure exactly what all these 5,000 circles, and I'm sure that was just literally scratching the surface of how many is actually out there.
That was part of the problem too, is that with Auntie Bev passing as early as she did, the way you're not taught everything at once. When you actually start to learn from elders, they'll give you a little bit and you need to absorb it, and you need to adopt it and integrate it, lesson 1 before lesson 2 sort of thing, and they'll take you on a ride. And so Auntie Bev passing early left us with some questions. And one of them for me was whether that story that she told us as to each time a person is initiated, they get a circle. It doesn't necessarily not sit with it representing a star map, and that each individual represents the star, and that the map is what they're using to represent each individual. The two stories from me aren't mutually exclusive, but it's unfortunately, since her passing, something that we're not going to get to the bottom of through that way anyway. Not yet.
Yeah. So I'll show you some random nature effects around the glyph site. You just let me know when that picture comes through.
Yeah, got it.
Yeah. So this literally looks like a massive tree growing out of the rock.
Holy crap.
Yeah.
The trees around this area do the most amazing thing. It's the energies around this particular site is very intense and quite full on. And whatever is going on in this location on an energetic level definitely affects nature. This is a tree I came across, so branch coming out this way, branch coming out this way, but both branches join back up, and this is literally a hole in the middle of the tree.
Wow.
When the boy showed me that, it's like that.
That's another, go back. That one, the tree's actually reached for the rock, grabbed onto it and continued on its way, but it didn't even need to. It didn't need to pass the rock. It could have grown straight up, and it's grabbed onto the rock. It's almost like it's drawing sustenance from it or something. It doesn't, the trees don't avoid the rock here, they come for them. It's mind-boggling.
And speaking of right angles in nature.
Oh, yeah.
So this... we were talking about at the start the mass burial, which is close to the Egyptian glyphs. This picture is taken from pretty much the entrance, and the entrance unfortunately is heavily damaged through what I presume is probably earthquake damage. But yeah, this is a piece of stone that apparently should be natural.
Yeah, brickwork. The whole thing is,
of course it's natural. You guys are just conspiracy theorists. Don't be ridiculous.
We've literally walked into this foyer, which is all constructed brickwork. And, you know, in typical Egyptian style, it's difficult to get into, on top of the fact that some of it's obviously collapsed. You know, Egyptians were known for not making those sorts of places very accessible. But it was obvious. We walked, you know, over a cliff and through the front, and we found ourselves in this foyer, and it was all square brickwork. And you could see these bricks and these pillars all very well constructed and a very clear entrance.
So what, we've got really, really clever kangaroos? Or
and there's the underground ones as well.
or somebody's not telling us something.
Yeah.
Is it the glyph?
Hey, could you grab those coloured ones? Oh, yeah, look at that.
Look at that.
Oh, sorry, I pressed the wrong button. So yeah, this is the entrance to the actual mass burial site. We had one pretty game person in our group that has not a lot of fear. That's Gav, that you know, but he wasn't willing to go exploring in this area at all. It was just way too dangerous. There's very precarious rocks just hanging there waiting to fall on your head, and
but it's collapsed brickwork. Any idiot can look at it and see that it's a collapsed piece of brickwork.
Yeah, it's obviously been masoned. This is obviously cut pieces. You can't tell me that edge is not a cut piece.
Image 38 and 39, right?
Sorry, what was that, Lisa?
Images 38 and 39, what are they? I'm just, the colours.
Oh, so yeah, this is just beautiful nature. This is an ochre cave, pretty close around to the glyph site, and seeing it in real life, it was the most amazing piece of artwork that I'd ever seen. It was done by nature.
Yeah.
So yeah, this used to actually be used as a ceremonial site. Down the bottom here is where they used to actually take the ochre. For those that don't know what ochre is, it's what the Aboriginals used to use to create paint that they would put onto their bodies.
Yep.
So yeah, it was absolutely amazing. I showed Annie Bev these sites, and she asked me never to go back there again because I actually stumbled across a female site. But yeah, I was very... Actually, I was allowed back there once because she actually wanted to go and see this in the real life, so I took her there. But yeah, she asked me not to go back there again. It was very sacred for the females.
Yeah, women's business.
Women's business.
Okay, we've only got a few minutes left, guys. Just to give everybody an update, last week I announced that I was having a good news, positive week. And I want to thank everybody for playing with me, because I have been amazing things and stories and jokes and pictures and stuff have been shared on my Facebook wall, and it's been lovely. I've even had people comply with leaving me a message saying, don't read my email until next week.
I was a good girl.
You were a pretty good girl, I must admit. I thought you
until this morning there was shit that came up that I just had to fucking post. But until I was a pretty good girl last week.
And it did change, because I did it offline as well. This wasn't just online. This was offline. I fully intended to stay very positive all week, and I managed it despite some challenges. And I've had the best week I've had in a while, put it that way.
Right.
And amazing stuff has come up, like this video, this trees video. And I was even contemplating, and I may as well suggest just at least just once, maybe Dee does a conspicuously good news week. See if you can find the positive.
Does it have to be just from 1 week? Because I think I'd have a hard time.
Just one show, even. Just one show. see if you can find.
She's already stressing.
Oh no!
The positive in the bad shit stories. So what are they? What does it really mean for us in a good way? So here's another false flag. Oh, instead of like dismantling it and going, oh, it's false, it's false. What about here's a false flag, which is good news because it means they can't actually pull that shit off. So they're that kind of a take.
Oh, well, I mean, I say that in every news report when it's a false flag. Ah, another failed false flag. Before we go, because I know we're like right at the very end, and it's 2 minutes, so I got to change the topic.
Yes.
Someone has to. I posted out Sunday, I think, a video. Someone posted an Unfuckers, and then I shared it out, and it's a flash mob.
Oh, yes.
It's the best
Beethoven.
flash mob I have ever seen. And it is basically the premise of it. It's a train station somewhere in Germany. So this big, huge train station. And you have a couple of musicians come in, like a guy with a double bass and a woman with a flute. And they all kind of come together in the middle and they start playing some music. And then all of a sudden, a woman who's like in the flower shop starts singing. And then another woman from like the second story balcony starts singing. And basically, out of all the people in the station, they're all like pull out instruments out of their coat and they all start playing along. And then a guy comes and rolls out the timpani drums and they burst into Carmina Burana, which is one of my most favorite pieces of music ever written. And the energy of this video is so incredible. So I posted it, I think, on the Sunday, and then lacking in internet as I was Monday before I got to go back and like read the comments on it. There was a shitload of comments on my wall on it. As I was reading the comments, I had this incredible, energetic feeling. Like, as in, you could just feel the energy. Like, everyone who watched it was just like, holy shit. And you could actually, as I was reading it, feel their energy of how elated and amazed and how awesome they felt coming. It was like, by the time I'd read, like, it was like 20 odd comments, my spine felt electrified and like my whole body was complete. I could physically everyone's elation. That was the only word I could come up with it. It was just, everyone so enjoyed the video so much. They had such an emotional and energetic interaction because of the video that just in reading their comments, it came through. So I want to this again. And let's see if we can find a couple of videos.
Say that again, because we lost you.
Hear me? I would like to repeat this again. Let's see if we can find a couple of videos like this that are things that are powerful and amazing. And the energy. People put their comments like under the post or whatever, and then see what we get from it. Because it was the first time that I really put that together. Like, it was so in your face, you could not ignore the physical response I had to the emotional response of the people.
Mm-hmm.
So I want us to try and repeat that. That's my idea for this week.
Nice.
Say again, please.
One quick last change of subject before we go. When we did JFK, when we did the Mandela effect around JFK's assassination, I said back then it'd be interesting to see if any of the more modern day icons' deaths get wonky, like Kurt Cobain, River Phoenix, I can't remember who else.
Princess Diana.
Yep. And apparently there is one around Kurt Cobain. I
need another half hour to do this section even alone. I am going to do a report on this specifically, and I ran out of internet, so I couldn't.
There is a poll. Can you put the link to the poll?
I'll put I've got it right here, and I'm going to share it with you guys so everyone can see. Oh, fuck, did I close it?
In my reality, he put a shotgun to his head and left a note. And apparently in others, he died of a drug overdose.
Yeah, he overdosed in my reality. I had this conversation with someone yesterday.
Okay, because we had this. Well, this came up. I'm going to show you guys. Hold on. Now I've lost my Zoom link. Where are you guys? Oh, there you are. Okay, so I put the poll up because the response that I got in the Unfuckers, okay, was so split. And it wasn't, I think I remember this, or I don't. Maybe I remember this. So the three answers I got, again, were he was a self-inflicted gunshot to the head, suicide, or a massive heroin overdose, or, and the third one was really interesting, a gunshot to the head and a massive heroin overdose.
Well, you don't really die of both of those things.
How do you do both?
But that's just it. So it was. You look at the split.
Wow.
49% said gunshot to the head. 23% said both, the gunshot and the heroin overdose. 26% said it was a massive heroin overdose.
Oh, hang on. With those two that said with those ones that said both,
yeah,
they mean they have two distinct memories, like one of each?
No. They remember the news coming out that he killed himself by shooting himself in the head, but that he had such a massive heroin overdose in his body that there was no physical possible way he could have pulled the trigger. Like, it was like he had 4 times the lethal amount of heroin in his body when he purportedly pulled the trigger, which of course, heroin is so fast acting, there's no possible way someone could inject that and then pull the trigger. It's not physically possible. But what I want to point out about this one is, this is the first one that I think I've encountered as a Mandela effect, a Toto effect, as a quantum cross wires effect, that you have an A answer, a B answer, and then a C answer that amalgamates A and B, almost as if they merged at some point. And there was a point in time, a reality, a timeline, pick a fucking word, where it was both, and the people's memories were real specific. Like I said, people remember things like this. If you were a huge Nirvana fan, you know how Kurt Cobain died. You don't just misremember it. No, I think he had an overdose, but maybe he shot himself. No, if that's not the way it works.
No.
So I found this one really interesting because there was the one that was obviously an emerging of both, as if there was this one, and maybe as it was going from this one to this one, at some point in time, it did this before it separated out to this. Real fucking interesting. Mm-hmm. So I called Princess Diana. Let's keep her eyes peeled. I'm telling you.
Oh, okay. Well, before
let's
just preempt some of this then. Princess Diana, as far as I'm concerned, died in a tunnel in France, being chased supposedly by reporters who caused the accident. She was in a Mercedes with the fiancé, Dodi.
With Dodi.
And
the bodyguard.
The bodyguard.
And a bodyguard.
And the driver.
Who survived.
The driver was drunk.
Does anyone beg to differ?
They said the driver was drunk, right?
As well, yes, and the rumor was that she was pregnant with Dodi's child, and that's why they killed her. That was the big rumor at that time.
John Lennon was shot on his doorstep.
John Lennon was shot on his doorstep.
River Phoenix died.
By the guy who just got released. What's his name? Oh, my God.
I can't remember.
Who shot John Lennon? Mark. Oh, come on, guys. Somebody help me.
Hinckley?
Google in front of me.
He has just been released.
Mark Dakota? Mark Hinckley? Mark Chapman?
No, Mark Chapman. Chapman? Is that it?
Someone says Chapman.
Okay, so River Phoenix died of a drug overdose out on the footpath at the front of the Viper Room, which was a nightclub owned by Johnny Depp.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Who else?
Mark David Chapman. Thank you, Megan. That's it. Mark David Chapman, I think. Yeah? I hope so. I can't.
Prince and Michael Jackson are too recent.
I don't know. You never know.
It still seems to be
Elvis?
excellent.
There's still
Here's
too much
my thing.
controversy around them at the moment, so I'd say they're too recent.
I went down, because of the whole thing of looking with Kurt Cobain's death, I went down a little rabbit hole of because I can't help myself, looking through the lists of artists, recording artists, who've died of drug overdoses. And then I went back and looked through the list, and Wikipedia's got a massive, you can look through like the death of every musician by decade, right? Very interesting when you see it all laid out. So, for example, Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, and Jimmy Morrison all died within 4 months of each other.
I don't remember the details around Jim Morrison's death, but I'm pretty sure Janis Joplin was supposedly a drug overdose and then choked on her own vomit. And who was the other one?
Jimi Hendrix is one of the ones that I've got questions about.
They were all in the 27 Club, yeah.
They were all in the 27 Club. And you look at the list go to Wikipedia, and I can't remember how I searched for it, of like list of rock stars who've died. And it's all laid out by decade. How many of them drowned?
Oh, yeah, a lot drowned.
How many died in a car accident? How many, now we get to, and you go, okay, well, it's the rock music genre. How many have died at a young age of heart attacks, like in their 50s, 60s? And you go, okay, well, it's a hard life, so it's used to being what it is. But the amount of them who died, drugs, expected, but car accidents, drownings.
Plane crashes as well, somebody's just pointed out. Absolutely.
Plane crashes, right, exactly. Jerry Lee Lewis, the Big Bopper, Leonard Skinner, entire fucking band. I mean.
Okay, this is crude, but the story around Elvis Presley was that he died on the toilet.
On the toilet.
Okay. Just checking.
I have a feeling we should start kind of checking in on a bunch of these, because we've set that intent. Well, we just set that intent. Let's see what comes out.
But so far, we were all in agreement around this, right? And there's no controversy around anybody you have just said right now.
Although Kurt Cobain, though, you and I have different experiences.
Yeah, but I'm wondering about that because it's after we've noticed the effect that we've discussed it.
True.
Right? And now here is, we're having a discussion before an effect.
Yeah.
And I wonder whether that plays into it, because one of the things that we saw when we were talking about Bible in particular was you would ask somebody, how does the Lord's Prayer go? You know, and they'd say, forgive us our trespass, and forgive those who trespass against us. And you'd say, so what if I told you now it actually doesn't say that? It says, forgive us our debts. And there would be this look, this kind of...
No. Come on. No. It's forgive us our trespasses. Because I was brought up Catholic of all things.
Yeah, no, darling, it's now forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors.
When did that happen?
That's old news.
But apparently the line doesn't lie down with the lamb now either. The line apparently lies down with the wolf.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's now the wolf lies down with the lamb.
Over their faces. It was like glitch. Like,
don't start your Darth Vader.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's how it went. Yeah, that's right. It's always been that. So it's like, I don't know, if we're talking timelines, if we have the discussion while there's two timelines, that we get one answer. If we have the discussion after they've merged, we have
interesting.
We get a different answer.
So can we take control of the Mandela effect then?
I'm playing my own experiment right now. I'm not willing to discuss. I am playing my own experiment. Exactly this.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for joining us this week. It's been lots of fun.
Thank you for having us.
Oh, we'll be dragging you back on again real soon because this was fun.
Great. Awesome. Excellent.
So thank you, everybody who's joined us live from anything from 4 a.m. to whatever ridiculous time it's been for you. Thanks to the ones who stayed up late. And we'll see you all next week. And I think we're going back to our regular time slot next week.
We're hoping to. I'm still trying to find a place to be able to record that's quiet, where I won't wake everyone up at 1 o'clock and 2 o'clock in the morning.
Now, for those who were in the chat room who still wanted to try and get into the UU room on Facebook, you have to be friends with someone who's in it. So if
Yes.
you put a call out on your own wall and ask if any of your friends are in the UU room. If you don't have any, send Dee a friend request.
And then remind me, because if you just send me a friend request and I accept it, I'm not going to automatically add you to the Unfuckers room because that would be rude. So you have to actually send me a message saying, hi, Dee, can you please add me to the Unfuckers room?
And she now knows where to go and find all her other messages.
Yeah, I found my spam folder.
Yeah, apparently it took ages.
Took me like a week to get through my spam folder.
Yeah. All right, guys. I will see you all next week.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.